My guest today is the most amazing Dr. Linda. And well, I know she has last names, but she's just Dr. Linda to me. She's a chiropractic and functional medicine practitioner and a real wealth of knowledge when it comes to women, menopause, hormone specialist, and she helps women all day long. What do you call it, Linda? What should our menopause season be?
Oh, it should be more of a rebirth season. It shouldn't be like you're pausing in life. To me, I look at menopause as it's a new opportunity. There's so much wisdom with it that
I
comes
love
with it.
that.
You know, it's been, I believe that it's just down looked upon like, oh, you're getting old. And I used to equate that back in when I was in 30s and 40s. I'm like,
Hmm?
oh, that's an old woman. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm her.
We're here. Here we are.
I'm like, I'm there. I'm like, I'm past halftime.
Yeah.
We look at life, we look at it in quarters, like, 25, the first 25 years, the second 25 years, the third quarter, the fourth quarter. All right, I'm past halftime.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but it's exciting. It's so many beautiful changes can happen as a result of this. However, if you don't prepare, what you do in your 20s and your 30s impacts everything of what happens in your perimenopause 40s and in your 50s. So why don't we kind of just like preface this, because there's so many women that they think, "Oh, I'm in menopause." I'm like, well, when you look at menopause, you want to look at kind of like perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So perimenopause is that whole few years. It could be 5 to 10 years. You're still having a period. You're just in hormonal decline, meaning that your hormones are kind of doing this. They're very unpredictable, specifically estrogen and progesterone. Menopause is really just that one day that it's like, okay, the baby factory is closed, no more babies. It's 12
Mhm.
months. I have not had a period. That's officially, I'm in menopause. And postmenopause is everything thereafter. It's like she's a closed down, and now we have a different job. So really, when we look at it, it's I always because I love teaching this to women. I look at hormones as a game. I said, if you know the players, how to manage the players, you can still kick butt even at halftime. You kind of reassess your life and you're like, all right, Queen Esther, as I call her, estrogen, I call her the queen. And she's in everybody's business. And that's how I say she is our testosterone. However, when we start to lose her in life, it's just like it's a little chaotic. It's like mama in the kitchen. When you're in the kitchen, it's like everything runs smoothly. It's like, okay, honey, you chop the onions, you do this, you do that. Where's this? Where's that? It's in the second drawer. It's in the pantry, blah, 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 right? We're like, that's Queen Estrogen. She like knows where everything is. She's like, boom, 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 boom. You go here, you do this, do that. Well, what happens is when we start going through that change of life where we get that estrogen decline, our Queen Esther, it's like she's not around. It's like everyone's like, okay, what do we do? Where's this? Where's that? There's so much more chaos that happens. And so I always say we got to look at the three really big hormones are going to be estrogen, progesterone. Okay, estrogen, she's our queen. She's got a little sass, she keeps things in control. Progesterone's her sidekick. She's the bestie. She's like, Queen, you're getting a little out of control. Calm down a little bit or just chill. And she's like, okay. And you got testosterone. She's kind of gives us a little bit of sass. I named them all. I call her Tessa. She's a little bit sassy, gets in there and she's like, all right, I'm here. Party on, So those are like three major hormones
Mhm.
that really impact a lot of us women when we're going through that change of life. But then we also have the thyroid hormone,
Mhm.
which the thyroid, I call her, she is the CEO of every single cell in our body. And we literally have like 30 to 40 trillion cells, and they all have a parking space for the queen. So what do you think's going to happen when it's just like the queen's not around? The parking space is available for her to come in and like, get things going, but she's not around anymore. But you also have that thyroid hormone, which also has a parking space. But she depends on estrogen and progesterone as well.
To
So you
thrive.
see how things get like a little bit
Mhm.
wacky? Well, like, oh my gosh. And when women think, like, oh, I'm just going to get on hormone replacement therapy and everything's going to be good. No, that's just one part of it.
Mhm.
So
Good. We
it's
have a
there,
lot of
there's,
questions about
yeah,
HRT.
there's a lot. And then, of course, there's the other one. I call her Courtney, cortisol. We have all heard about cortisol, right? That we call her the stress hormone. She comes in and she's just like, all right, there's a mess here. Let's clean it up. And then she leaves. She's like, comes out with the big guns and cleans up the mess and she bails. But when she hangs out too long, it's like give a woman a gun and she's hormonal, she's shooting everything up.
Yeah.
You don't want her around that long. You just want her
No.
to come in, take care of business, and she's kind of like the ambulance comes in, let's get the dead bodies out of here, let's get out of here.
Yeah. And a
So,
lot of people are not aware that their cortisol levels have been at 9 million for the last 10 years just because of life, because of stressors, because of being in fight or flight, because of running families and businesses and going to your jobs and all of the things. And we're just not aware sometimes of what would be indications that levels are out of control until all of a sudden they're all out of control and we're approaching 50-ish around there like I am. And then everything's on fire. So first, I want to ask, a lot of people asked, what labs do you ask for? So I'm going to my doctor. I want to get my blood test. I want to see where all my levels are. What do we need to get?
so like I have two young daughters. I did check their hormone levels in their 20s because
Mhm.
I want to know. I'm like, you have to have a baseline. Okay, so I did check
A good
estrogen,
idea.
progesterone, testosterone. I'm checking cortisol. I'm checking those hormones. Typically, most doctors are going to run a CBC, a CMP, and a lipid panel, which is cholesterol. The CBC basically tells you red blood cells, white blood cells, and in those labs, you can actually pick up infections, you can pick up anemias. However, some doctors are not trained to look at them that way. I am, so it's very different. And then you have your CMP, which will tell you a lot about your minerals, your electrolytes, also tell you liver enzymes, also glucose, which is a big factor in once menopause kicks in, perimenopause. And you also have cholesterol, which everyone just like freaks out about cholesterol, but you need healthy cholesterol levels in order to know that you're making enough hormones. Your hormones depend on healthy cholesterol levels. And just because a woman's cholesterol levels do go up, which they will in times of stress, because you have more of a hormonal demand, the cholesterol level is going to go up. During menopause, it's also going to go up, because our thyroid starts to shut down because we have less estrogen, we have less progesterone. Shall we say you've got to start with those three? You got to check vitamin D, you got to check iron levels, you have to check we say, of course, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, full thyroid panel. I'm talking about antibodies, free T3, free T4. I also check sex hormone binding globulin, which it's like the little transport system for the hormones. So that's also important. I personally check, I have my own panel, check fasting cortisol, fasting insulin. I also check cortisol. We check DHEA as well. So there's a slew of hormones to check in there. And of
Mhm.
course, if a woman is still cycling, LH and FSH, or some of this more of a pituitary hormone that we check. So those are some of the labs. Typically, most doctors will not even check it. They'll check the first three that I told you, the CBC, the CMP, and your lipid panel. That's about it. You're lucky if they'll add vitamin D and B12 in there, but you need vitamin D for your hormones to work properly. You also need B vitamins. You also need iron for your thyroid to work properly, which is, I call her the fat burning hormone or fat burning gland. So, those are some of the markers that you have to really look at. Unfortunately, I always say health is stacked against us women. For one, most of the research out there is done on men, even mice. They won't pick female mice because they're too erratic. They want predictability. So they're going to choose men. If you look at most of the funding, who is it given to? It's given to male researchers, not female researchers. It's like when we say something, it's like, oh, where's the research? And if a man says something, it's just like they just take it as gospel. So it's already kind of stacked against us. It's almost like we have to prove our worth, which is bullcrap, you know?
Yeah.
And so much is stacked against us. Like we think that just because we're a woman that we're less than. So we don't need to figure out what's going on with them. They're just good for babies. So it's so
Well,
unfortunate.
it's really interesting. So I've had several people say that everything that we're looking at, most of the studies that we're looking at and reading is about it's done on the male body. So we really have to be careful because we're so completely different. And that's why you're here
Yeah.
and not a male doctor. No offense, male doctors. And no offense at all. It's just if I'm talking about women in menopause, then I want to find someone who's crushing it and looks like you and walks the walk and talks the talk and knows what to do to be thriving like you are. And so I
Yeah.
think just anyone around, in the country listening, I mean, obviously you can work with Linda, and if you can find, a woman uh, doctor, I think you're just going to have some better feedback.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there.
Yeah.
Because there's some questions that I always ask, how can I talk to my doctor regarding this? And like
Mhm.
I said, no offense, there's a lot of great male
No.
doctors, there's a lot of great female doctors, but
Yeah.
let me tell you this. I'm sorry, I don't know what it's going to be like to have an erection or have issues with that, just like a man is not going to know what it's like to have vaginal issues. I don't care how
True.
many women you have seen in your practice, you're watching a woman eat it's like watching 10,000 women eat ice cream and go, oh, this is so good. But you have no idea what it's like to taste the ice cream because you've never tasted it. So
Yes.
I'm like, there's a difference between actually experiencing it and seeing it. Same
Yeah.
thing, you go to a young female doctor. All she knows, or a nurse practitioner, all they know is what they were taught in school. They get
Yeah.
1 hour of what do you do with a woman that's 40 and over in menopause? 1 hour.
Yeah.
What? That's ridiculous. And an
Yeah.
OBGYN gets 6 hours.
Yeah.
1 out of 5 OBGYNs out there, and most women think I need to go see my OBGYN because I think I'm having hormonal issues.
Mm.
They don't know. All
Right.
they know is like, what are they make money having babies, making babies, helping women make babies, delivering babies. They do
Yeah.
not make money sitting down having a conversation.
Well, my OB-GYN is a 70-year-old woman, and I chose her on purpose. And it's not
Love it.
because of the, it's, not just being a woman, but to your point, because she's been through menopause. So it's called moral authority. You have the experience. And then also with everything else, we're each of us are our own chemistry sets. And so you talk about that all the time. So the first question was about, besides the labs, let's talk about optimal levels and how would you determine what is optimal? Because a lot of times it seems everybody has a different number, especially when it comes to cholesterol. But I want to talk about hormone levels first, these specifics: estradiol, T3, T4, progesterone, DHEA. How do you know? Are you have, obviously you would have to give the feedback from the client. I'm feeling better would be a great thumbs up. That's how you know. But what are you looking for when you first see the labs the first time?
Absolutely. It's a combination of both. So when we look at labs, we're getting the lab results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have this range. Okay, well, you're normal compared to who?
Yeah. I
All
feel like
this
shit.
who's going to the labs to get
Yes.
their blood work drawn. Every person I seen there, I'm like, oh, they have this. I've been trained for so many years. So I start picking up, oh, they have a liver issue, they have a gut issue. That person has some blood sugar issues. I'm watching, and it's so funny. It's like so many times I go in there, I walk in and they just look at me like, what are you doing here?
Mm.
Because it's like I don't look like everyone else because I look at labs very, very differently, but also I always say you cannot manage what you can't measure. So
Right.
number one, you want to look at labs at what are the optimal ranges? Where is my body going to be optimal? There's some optimal ranges, but also we have to look at it's your health. It's your menopause. You're the N of one. You're your own lab. Just because Jane next door is taking ashwagandha, rhodiola, mushrooms, taking 20 different supplements every single morning. She gets up, she puts her hiking vest on, she's out walking for an hour. She comes home, she's awesome. For other women, it's like, I'm tired just watching you.
Hmm.
You got to look at, as a practitioner, it's like I have to listen to the patient, the person that is in front of me, but I also have to look at their labs. Like
Hmm.
if someone comes in and they're telling me, um, you know, my cholesterol level was high. I went to my doctor and they put me on statins, but before, when my cholesterol level was high, I didn't feel anything. I was feeling great. My skin was healthy. I was going to the bathroom. My brain was firing. Everything was great. As soon as I got on the statins, I start feeling like crap.
Hmm.
So then you listen, it's like, okay, well, let's look at some of your other markers. Cholesterol elevated by itself does not mean a thing. Let's look
Right.
at your thyroid. Let's look at homocysteine. Let's look at your inflammatory markers. Let's look at glucose. Let's look at insulin. Let's look at other markers.
Right. So
Really
each
don't,
of your clients, you do have a range, and there's like a range on
absolutely.
your labs. But what do you find that people are very greatly in the way they feel? Let's go to estradiol.
Mhm.
In a 300 versus somebody else could feel great at a
Yeah.
100.
Okay.
Is everybody different?
Oh, absolutely. So when it comes
Okay.
to like estradiol, like specifically, estradiol being, there's different types of, when we talk about hormones, a lot of
Mhm.
women think estrogen, but
Mhm.
there's three types of estrogen. This estrone, also known as E1, estradiol, which is our queen,
Mhm.
and then there's estriol, which is E3, which is more dominant during pregnancy. So E1 is more dominant in women that are in menopause, E2, women that are cycling, E3, women in that are pregnant. So typically, what we have seen, because of some of the studies there, they just want to give women just a tiny bit, just kind of to take the edge off of having those
Mm.
vasomotor symptoms, like the hot flashes, I can't sleep, because really that's what it will help with. So that's where doctors will give you the least possible, just to kind of take the edge off you
Mhm.
know. But if you want to see an impact from a neurological perspective, also from a musculoskeletal perspective, we're looking at least the ranges of 60. That is at 60. I mean, if your ranges are at 30 or 40, it's like you're not getting those protective benefits. You're not getting the neuroprotective benefits, and you're not getting the musculoskeletal protective benefits as well.
Mhm.
So really, if you're at 60 or higher, and you're at 100 and you feel awesome, you're killing it at 100, then
Mm.
do it. That's fine. When it comes to hormones, such a strong believer that you really should be testing more frequently. Not, oh, I'm going to go get my blood work up once a year. I'm sorry, I don't think once a year is enough.
Mm.
Personally, I test at least 4 times a year. There's 4 seasons in a year.
Yeah.
We go and take our vehicles, unless you drive an electric car, to go get your oil change maybe 4 times a year, right? There's certain things that we do. The body's the same way. And there's times where my thyroid was a little bit wonky, so I was checking it pretty regularly, but I was also going what I was feeling with. And it
Yeah.
also depended on the patient. There's also, of course, that mental component in there where they look at their labs and they let their labs tell them how they're going to feel.
Mm.
You have to look at both. It's just not one thing. So when I look at estradiol, I'm always looking at, okay, I want to see a little bit like 60 and above. When we look at testosterone, there's so much controversial. If you look at testosterone, if you look at some of the ranges, I think in LabCorp, it's like you're normal if you're at zero point 0.0 to about 4.0. I'm like, You're normal if you're at
That's a
0.0,
huge
that's
range.
normal? Yeah. So when it comes to testosterone, we want to look at free testosterone.
Mm.
Okay. Free tells you, total tells you what's bound and unbound. Free
Okay.
tells you what is available for your body to use. I like to see everything at that upper half, closer to the 4. That's
Okay.
what I see. And I mean, I, once again, when I talk to my female clients, patients, I'm like, how are you feeling? What are you doing? Are you doing all this other stuff? Because there's a lot of lifestyle stuff that we can get into in regards to hormone replacement therapy. It shouldn't even be called hormone replacement therapy. It should just be menopausal therapy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hormone booster therapy. How about that?
Yeah, I love that. It's and there's a lot of so much fear has been thrown into that also with women when it comes to hormones. Thank you to the whole Women's Health Initiative study, which is a flawed study to start from. And a lot of that, there's so much changes going on with that, and taking a second look, and it's like, oh, I think we
Hmm.
screwed up. But it's kind of hard to admit when you're wrong. It's
Mhm.
just like, and when you're taught a certain way, that's all you know.
Right.
And it's embarrassing at times. I mean, I had to go back and say, you know what? No, having cholesterol levels that are low, it's not the best thing for you.
Hmm.
Fasting for some women is not the best for you. It's once bio individuality is what we have
Yeah.
to look at.
I just sorry to interrupt, but someone did ask the question about what is the difference between synthetic hormones and bioidentical hormones. Could you answer that question real quick?
Sure. Well, both of them are made in labs.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're looking at like bioidentical, we always are looking at, well, where are they sourced from?
Hmm.
The source is different. Whereas the synthetic, and most of the synthetic, you're going to look at the oral that has to go through the liver, and it
Mm.
is going to promote clotting. Okay, that's what the women's study was. That's what they used in the Women's Health Initiative. So
Mm.
when you're looking at, there's different types of hormone therapy that you can use. For one, if you look at hormone replacement therapy in the form of, there's creams, okay, there's the topical, for there's patches, oral. A lot of women there, a lot of doctors don't prescribe oral anymore. And there's also pellets, there's troches as well. I've tried them all because
Hmm.
I've experimented with all of them. And I think this is where each woman has to figure out what's best for her. There's some doctors that they're going to push pellets. It's a big money maker. It is, just going to be honest with you. But that's their bread and butter. That's how they make a living. Um, I think just hormones and pellet therapy is not the best thing for a patient if they are not taking into consideration all the other factors, like
Mm.
the liver, your gut health, diet, exercise, kind of like Ozempic. That's a
Mhm.
whole different conversation, but that, if you use it properly, then I think it's okay. But once again, that's a bio individuality type of situation. And you have to ask the client in front of you, the patient in front of you, what are your goals? I kind of assume that, and maybe I shouldn't, but ask you, um, whenever I see females that come in and they've been athletes their entire life. They're like, I started playing sports when I was 10 years old, and they're very competitive. They're alpha females. It's like, let's get stuff done. Let's go, 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 go. You have to look at, okay, her hormonal levels, she may do better thriving with higher testosterone levels. Whereas the woman that didn't play any sports, she was just like, you know what? I'm kind of just an artsy person. I like to paint, I like to do crafts. Nothing wrong with that. Each woman is different. I'm more driven of like, let's go, let's get stuff done. Growing up around mostly men, I've been driven. I'm like that. They call me that alpha woman, or that woman that's like, let's get stuff done. You
Mhm.
know, and as business owners, most women that are business owners, you have kind of that little alpha, that little, you have to have that drive.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're not going to succeed in business. We have to drive a little bit. There's kind of that balance. The problem has come where it's like we think we can do things like men. We can't. That's just the reality of it. We can't. If there's a fire at our house, I hope there's more male firefighters than female firefighters coming in to save me, because they are stronger. You know, they can be the same age, but I bet you the men are going to be stronger than the female by default. I'm not saying
Mhm.
she can't be as strong, but she's going to have to do a lot more work to reach that same level of what the capacity of what he can do things. So when it comes to hormones, once again, it's a bio individuality. How do you feel? How are your other mechanisms working? How's the liver working? How is the gut working? There's
Right.
so much in there. What is your sleep like? What do you do for stress? How do you manage stress? What are you eating?
Right.
You know?
I want to talk about the sleep, because then the other categories, we have physical symptoms and then we have emotional symptoms, because
Mhm,
everybody's questions were either usually had, they were in one of two categories. So the most common ones are the interrupted sleep and then the sweating at night.
mhm.
And then the emotional, my one of my questions is this just gonna we're just gonna have to accept the fact that there's gonna be a just days we want to murder everybody. I had to laugh out loud at that one.
Oh,
So let's talk about the most common symptoms are sleep, weight gain, sweating at night.
yeah. I
What
love
is the root
Yeah.
cause?
Well, it goes back to our beautiful queen. Queen, I always say our beautiful queen, Queen Esther. So because estrogen she impacts acetylcholine, she impacts BDNF, she impacts dopamine. Those are all, chemical messengers that impact serotonin is a good one there, which is a precursor to melatonin. Serotonin makes us feel happy.
Mm,
We love serotonin. Happy, but also helps us with our sleep. We also have it impacts dopamine. Dopamine is like, let's go, girls. We got this. We can do this. She impacts all these other systems in our body. That's why I said she's the life of the party, because she impacts all these other neurotransmitters, all these other systems in our body. That's why there's times where it's just like, yeah, we just want to murder somebody. And it's kind of like, or your husband or your kids say something to you. Your husband will say, gosh, you're a little bit grumpy. It's like, oh, don't even go there.
mhm.
It's like you just want to, or you've changed. It's like, no crap.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because we
Yes,
all know what that feels like, and we don't want to feel that way, and
yeah,
we're frustrated that we feel frustrated. I don't want to be
exactly.
frustrated.
But the brain does change. There's
Yeah.
some new
Okay.
research. And I love her. If you haven't, if if the listeners have not dug into her work, and I keep digging into her work, is Dr. Lisa Mosconi. Um,
Mm.
she's a neurophysicist, and just is a very super intelligent woman. She comes from neuroscientists, both her mother and father at the age of 18. She was around all these neuroscientists, and I think
Cool.
also she's like board certified, like in nuclear medicine. So it's quite interesting some of the research she's doing with the brain. So what's beautiful about the research now, because there is not a lot of there's no money that goes into research for women's brain.
Mm.
Less for menopausal women, but even the brain, just even less. So what's interesting is there's a gray matter part in the brain, okay, and it's about 40% of our brain. That changes when we go through that change of life. You know that when you're in your 20s and in your 30s, You can hold on to the baby. You can be on the phone. You could be cooking. You could be doing laundry. You're like multitasking. You can like boom, 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 boom. You've just like, you got it all together. It's like, you have a problem, give it to a woman that's in her 20s and 30s. She's on it. She'll find the answer like that.
Yeah.
You give that same problem, that same challenge to a woman that's in her 40s, at her brain is changing because of estrogen, estradiol, she's going to like fumble a lot more because we also have less gray matter.
Mm,
And so we also have less estrogen. Our brain is like full of parking spaces that wants estrogen in there, but we have less of it.
yeah.
So,
So most of the physical symptoms and emotional symptoms is most likely because estradiol is too low. Is that what
yep,
you're saying?
yep. And our brain does change because think about it. It's kind of like when you have a room, a house with 5 or 6 bedrooms, and you have kids, every single room is set up for the child, right? When they leave the house, it's like, okay, well, now that becomes the hobby room, the craft room, that becomes the exercise room, that becomes the sitting room. The kids are like, they don't visit as much, so the rooms change.
Mm.
That happens to our brain as well.
So you're saying that you kids actually do move out eventually? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
I'm
So
kidding. I
the
don't want mine to
brain,
move out.
I would love to have my kids at home because they bring such a beautiful, vivacious energy too. I love
Amen.
having kids around. They say the darndest thing, but um, so what happens? Our brain does change. It's like we're wired to like we're that mama bear. It's like, oh no,
Yes.
no, you didn't. It's like kids, they would try something and I'm like, stop, don't even go there. And they're like, does she have like eyes in the back of her head? And
Mhm.
it's like, as you get older, they're like, Mom, I already told you that like 3 or 4 times. And
Mhm.
they will be talking to me, but I'm in front of the computer working. I'm like, honey, don't talk to me when I'm in front of my computer because my brain is now wired differently than
Mm.
it was when I was in my 20s and my 30s, and I could do a million things. I was just like, no problem. I don't see why not everybody can do this. However, as we do go through that change of life, as we do lose some of that estrogen, our brain does change, and
Yes.
it's going to change even by default because once again, we don't need those same neural connections that we needed when we were in our 20s, just having babies when you're in your 40s, 50s, and beyond.
Mhm.
So you can give a woman a task, give her one task, and just go to town on that task. You're like, whoa, dang, I didn't even think about that. Compared to, I mean, you just give her one task and just focus on that. And then that brings another problem with women that the billions of dollars that are lost as a woman goes through menopause and why a lot of women go through so many challenges with not moving up that corporate ladder once they hit their 40s. That's why a lot of women go through divorce as well, because it's not firing off in synchronicity as it was before when your hormones were like, ooh, very predictable. When you get
Mm.
into your 40s and 50s, it's like, woo, it's like you're like the Tasmanian devil. One day you're happy, the other day it's like you want to rip their eyes out.
Right.
So there
Right.
are some changes that happen, but you know what's super important? I always say there's always a backup. I always think of God made our bodies so beautiful. I said there's always a backup. One of our backup systems, I always say the backup quarterbacks, not going to be the star quarterback, but we don't need the star anymore since we don't have kids, though maybe we're going to be grandparents. But you do have another backup system. That's where your adrenal glands come in. Okay. Adrenals also make testosterone. Most people do not know this, and probably most doctors don't even know this, but your estrogen comes from testosterone, and your adrenal glands make testosterone.
Hmm.
And so you need testosterone to make estrogen. And so, but the adrenal glands also, remember, adrenals make cortisol. She comes in and she kind of is like, there's drama, there's stress. She comes in, does her thing, then she leaves. However, when we are under that constant stress, it's just like, sorry, honey, estrogen, you're on the backup right now. I need to handle all this stress. Estrogen is
Brilliant.
like, we don't need her right now. We got to get
Yes.
to the stress.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting, but I think it's really important for listeners to who are may not be aware of being under stress because we're so used to a certain go 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 24/7.
Yep.
So could you please explain to women what does it feel like when your body is been making too much cortisol for too long?
So there's different types of, well, let's talk about different types of stressors and how the body
Yeah.
responds. So
Thank you.
basically, when I see patients in my practice, whether it's for physical medicine, whether it's for functional medicine, I always say, I know that this root cause is going to be stress. Physical stress can be anything from you're not recovering from your workouts, you're not sleeping enough, you're sitting all day. You can go work out for an hour, but if you're sitting all day long at your desk, you're not moving enough, that's another type of stress. You were in an injury, you were in a car accident. Okay. Those are some of the physical stressors. The chemical stress is anything and everything that goes into your body and it is around your body. So when we're looking at chemical stressors, we're looking at the food, we're
Mm,
looking at the soil, we're looking at what our cleaning products are. We're looking at our carpets, what's in our home. We're looking at mold. Okay. We're looking at smog. We're looking at water. Okay. So that's, so we got the physical, we got the chemical, and then we have the emotional stressors. The emotional stressors are how are our relationships with with our kids, with our partners, at work, in our community. We're looking at all those types of stressors. So a person says, I'm not stressed. Oh, and you also have your chemical stressors that will contribute to the chaos in your gut, which has a huge connection with the brain and how your brain functions. So you have that gut brain connection. All of those stressors are going to impact your gut, which make those neurotransmitters. We're talking about serotonin, we're talking about dopamine, we're talking about GABA, we're talking about those chemical messengers that impact how you feel. And so when your body is under stress, you're making cortisol. Cortisol is actually creating so much chaos where it actually will destroy some of those brain cells, for one. Number two, it also impacts your gut. And I want to get into something with the gut and how to optimize gut and even how exercise impacts the gut that
definitely.
probably less than 0.0001% of people know. But it will, and you'll have something like called leaky gut, okay, which is intestinal permeability. And so when you have that, it's just like, oh, okay, you're eating good food, but it's like putting premium gas in a gas tank with holes.
Mm,
Not going to get the optimal, fuel and mileage for your vehicle when you have holes in your gas tank. And
mm.
that's also what happens when when we have leaky gut because of what adrenal makes cortisol. It
So
literally
what are the
affects every system.
So what are the markers to say if someone says, I think my gut's okay, but I'm not sure. I think I eat pretty clean and I'm, try to mitigating some chemicals and I think I'm doing okay in this area. What are some markers that would show
So
that the gut needs some love?
so one of the best tests, I love doing GI testing, but you can even look at some blood tests. And what I will look at is I will look at fasting insulin and I will also look at glucose because those create inflammation. Of course, when there's inflammation, who starts to show up? Cortisol is going to show up. I also look at total protein. I look at albumin. I look at globulin. I look at uric acid. Those are some other markers that I look at and say, what's going on in here? I look at the white blood cell count.
Mm,
I look at what's going on there. It's just like a lot of times when there's infections in the body, I'm always going to look at immunity, and that's going to that tells me gut. I go back and
Ah,
check gut. So
so
you
those
see,
markers tell you the immune system is
and 60
working
to 80%
over
of
time.
the immune system is in the gut. And so if a person like autoimmunity, 100% of the time of the people that have come in to see me, their gut's a mess. And
With
women
autoimmune
or
diseases.
GI issues because once again, even estradiol, remember the queen, she's in
Mhm.
everybody's business.
She is.
She also impacts your gut. She's
Mm.
so important. And so yeah, it's just it's all interconnected. In I think the fault here with traditional medicine going into allopathic medicine, they're taught to look at, okay, you look at just one thing, send it to that specialist. The more niche you are, the more of a god you are in medicine. It's like I specialize in this one little itty bitty piece of the body. You're the
Mhm.
specialist. You get paid more. So that's what they're taught. They're not taught to look at everything is connected.
Mhm.
You know, everything is, we need each other. It's a community. And it's the same thing when it comes to the gut. That is overlooked, and it probably hasn't been until the last 10 to 15 years, maybe even 20 years, where the gut has really been taken seriously.
Right.
Remember with some of
God.
the functional medicine training, they were talking about the gut, and I'm like, what the heck does that have anything to do with hormones or brain health or joint health or, cardiovascular issues? It's like, no, it has everything. And as I continue to dig into the research, especially even right now with menopause and women having that visceral fat, that menopause, that menobelly in here, the gut is huge. It plays a huge role in that.
So your
So,
fasting glucose would be high, uric acid would be high, all those things that you listed. I'm going to put everything in the show notes.
yeah,
Would be on the high end. That would tell you
it
that
could
your
be on the high
gut
or low,
micro.
like globulin, total protein, whether it's either high or low, can also impact that albumin as well. So yeah, there's a lot that you can look at that as and like I said, I always all look at the CBC as well. I look at the white blood cells and then the subsets of the white blood cell.
Beautiful.
So yeah,
Wow.
there's just so much. And it's like, and I always geek out on this. And it's so funny, like so many times I will my husband's like my best friend, so I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe this.
Right.
He probably knows more about women's health than probably any other man out
Mhm.
there because of it really it excites me, but it also saddens me that there's so many women, they're not getting the help that they need. They're
Mhm.
looked at like you're crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. It's like there are neuroendocrine changes that are happening from a
Yeah.
neurological perspective, our
Yeah.
brain to an endocrine system perspective. There is a change. We need to look at that, and we need
Well,
to
just
look
like
at
you just mentioned, as one example of that, you can have chronic stress, not know it, and chronic stress can cause all kinds of symptoms.
absolutely.
So it really comes down to really getting to know your body and doing the research and maybe seeing a few different professionals. And then you are the one that's in charge of yourself. See what works for you. Test it out. I think everything is, instead of someone told me this, and so I will just do this.
Mhm.
Why don't we open our minds just a little bit? And that's why I love having these conversations. Let's look at the whole body and see what we can test here. And then let's test that. And then let's test that. As in some of the HRT. And then try the microbiome. You have a whole protocol on how to just, reduce all the inflammation and clean out your gut. And I'll put that link on in the show notes as well if anybody wants to look at that. But it's so important, I feel, what you're saying now is looking at the gut, how it affects the brain, how the brain affects the body,
Mhm.
and all of your systems and organs and cells. And I love that we're
And
talking about it now. It's never too late. It doesn't matter if you never took a blood test for 50 years. It doesn't matter. Take one now and then see
exactly.
where you are and
Yeah.
then test. Everything's going to be a test from there on.
Exactly. Something
Yeah.
you said that was, I think, is worth mentioning is about the mind.
Yeah.
We underestimate the power of our mind. And anytime a person, like when I have patients or whenever I talk to someone, I'm very mindful of the words that they use.
Mm,
I, they're like, I this, I have, I am. And I'm like, everything after I is going to seek you out. I have this. So it's like they own it. It's like it becomes such a limitation because they fight for their eyes. And so I
mhm.
say, if you're fighting, I am this, well, whatever follows I or I am, and you're really just locked into that, it better be a good story because you're putting your story, you're creating a story of your life by the words that you're speaking.
100%.
And it's just like the story of our life now is because of the words that we're speaking, is because of the thoughts that we're thinking. And
Well,
I
I'm glad you
love,
emphasized
I
that.
I love your work because you will get into and really exploring the mind is just amazing.
Mhm.
It's just like exploring the brain. And it's like it's really a new frontier. And it's just like, I mean, part of studying this, and while I feel that I kind of set apart from a lot of other practitioners, because I love to study everything from getting into the quantum field and getting into it really exploring the mind and how it works and how we can make ourselves sick just by thought alone.
We
And if we
can.
can make ourselves sick by thought alone, why can't we make ourselves well with our thoughts? We have over 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and most of those thoughts are the same that we had yesterday.
Yes.
And people get stuck in that program. They're programmed every single day to start and do the same thing. They wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, let me see if my pain is there. It's there. Okay, now I can get up. But we get to program every single day our
We
morning.
sure do. And if you have a hard time with that, if you really truly believe that menopause is going to be horrible, you're definitely going to gain weight. You're going to have all these symptoms that you've heard about. Because I remember 20 years ago, I heard all these people, all the things. I saw my friends gain weight. I saw their hair thin. They would always complain about everything that they're going through. But I didn't connect with it because I didn't have any of those. I didn't have any of the same experiences. So I didn't really even. I didn't realize I was owning those and I was being programmed with this is how it is. It's just going to suck and you're going to be fat and miserable for the rest of your life until I started doing mindset work. And as I get older and as I got to be closer to those symptoms, and then you have helped me optimize all my levels and I feel amazing. Um, but now I know how powerful the mind is. And thank you for saying that. But that's why I love my work as well, because sometimes we don't consciously know that we are thinking these thoughts 100 times a day.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't sleep last night. I was tossing and turning. I must be in menopause and it's going to be horrible and it's old and I'm going to be old now. And it's just, and if that is the MO, if that's your main fluctuations of thoughts as you go into your 50s, then you can just start there because you can
Yeah.
completely let that go and you completely rewire to feel the way that Linda talks about it now. It's exciting. It's the second half of life. We're in the third quarter comeback. We're going to be badass. Like you can change whatever it is that you feel you've already made up your mind about what the next 25 years is going to be. It doesn't
Absolutely.
have to be that way. You don't have to hold on to that. It can be released and replaced. Um, and that's number one. Like I think that's number one.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
it's
not.
exciting
It's
though,
all
but I
important.
I love this part. I love this part because
Too.
it is missed out by so many practitioners and just people in general. Like I will listen to the conversations. I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot hear these people. And so
Yeah.
anywhere I go, I have my headphones on at the gym. I'm always listening to something that's going to
Hmm.
build my brain. So I very rarely listen to music. I do listen to music sometimes, but
Hmm.
it's just like I just want to learn and I'm like, okay, I got to look up that research paper, pull out my little phone and I okay, notes, look up da 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 and go in and so it's just so important of like you speak and your cells are always listening. Those 30 to 40,000 or 40 trillion cells are hearing what you're saying. We can
Yes.
make ourselves sick, just like you're at the gym and you're like, come on, the trainer's pushing you. Come on, you got this. Come on, Karen, one more. And you're like, I
Mhm.
can. Yes,
Mhm.
you can. And it's
And then
like,
you do it.
oh, and then you do it. And it's like, wow, he said I could do it. So then I started to believe that I could do this.
Yes.
So the thought and the belief is simply a thought we keep thinking. And we fight so much for our limiting beliefs because it takes us off the hook to explore something new, which will take us out of our whole program because we want to do things. We're all programmed to do things a specific way. And when you interrupt that program, it's like you get pissed off. But you sometimes interrupt that program in order to create a new solution, a new ending, a new chapter. And so that's what's very difficult with a lot of women. And so, yes, the brain does change. Yes, our body does change, but it
Yes.
doesn't have to change for the worse. There
Mm.
are other backup systems. One of the most common questions, and I know because we're running out of time right now, but I really believe it's super important to emphasize because the number one thing that women come to see me for, besides the vasomotor symptoms of, oh, I have hot flashes and sleep. I guess we can, I don't know, which one should we do? Should we do sleep or should we do exercise? We're probably going to have to do a part two here, but
We definitely will do a part two as we
the
have so
visceral,
many questions.
yeah, the
And I'm so
visceral,
grateful for everybody who submitted questions, by the way.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
We'll
We
get
will
through them
answer
all.
all of them.
Yeah,
We're just going to do a part two.
yeah. So
Please proceed.
big one is the visceral fat. It's that meno belly. It's that belly fat. They're like, I am working out. I'm eating better. I'm cutting my calories. I'm doing carnivore. I'm doing keto. And they're
Mhm.
like, and I cannot get rid of this belly fat. I'm spending an hour doing zone 2 training and I'm still not getting rid of this belly fat. All
Mm.
right. Newsflash here, ladies. You are not going to get rid of the belly fat with zone 2 training. You're not. You're just going to create more of a cortisol response. Like in the
Mm.
mornings, we've talked a couple times. I go for a walk in the morning. That's my soul food. I don't count that as my workout. That is my soul food. When I get to talk to God, I get to just be grateful. I'm just happy that I thank my body from head to toe. Thank you, brain. Thank you, eyes. Thank you, this. I am just in full gratitude when I'm out for a walk in the morning. I don't count that as exercise. I put on a weighted vest. It's hard to get my heart rate up being been a runner all my life. Okay.
Mm.
So that's not going to do anything for my visceral fat at all. Okay. The biggest thing that women can do that's going to change that visceral fat is they have to do um, intense sprint interval training. I'm talking about you're like running that 100-yard dash for 20, 30 seconds. That tiger is chasing you and you're going to be dinner. You got to take off. You've got to do at least 5 of those. If you do that 3 times a week, you are going to get rid of that visceral fat
Mm.
versus doing zone 2 cardio 45 minutes 5 days a week or 3 days a week. Why does
Why?
that happen? Is because it changes your gut microbiome. You get into what's called a hypoxic state. It's like, I can't use this. What happens is you got these gut bugs. They're called firmicutes. They hold on to fat. And this
Mm.
is where that whole microbiome comes in. They hold on to fat. And so if you have that imbalance, guess what? You're going to hold on to that belly fat. However, when you're doing that sprint interval training,
Mhm.
that changes your microbiome to get
Wow.
rid of those fat bugs. It also changes the hormones balance and the inflammation. Because when you're doing that 1 hour of cardio every day, going to those Orange Theory, doing all that workout every single day, and you're wondering, why
Mm.
am I not losing weight? Because your gut microbiome has not changed. And the way That's the beauty about exercise. It's just like, I love it. When you do that sprint interval training, you're changing your microbiome. Is that cool or what?
It's so cool.
So women don't, and so they think that it's like, oh, I'm going to do the sit-ups, you know, and like I said, I'm going to go do those long cardio. No, that's what I call soul food. That's food for your brain, just to
Mm,
like put you in that gratitude to um reduce that cortisol spike. But if you're out there just pushing, 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 you're going to make yourself fatter. You're going to hold on to that visceral fat. So it's super important that you do that sprint interval training. It's super important that you get that fiber. You need a diverse microbiome also to get rid of that visceral fat, that belly fat.
mm,
So there's a huge connection with that. So
mhm.
exercise
And
is like, wow, that's why, and also doing um I always say muscle is the organ of longevity. And so we need to be lifting heavy weights. That also impacts our microbiome, which is going to impact that visceral fat that we're getting. And
mm,
if you want to get rid of that cellulite. So I wanted
that's
to,
so awesome. Yeah, you always say that. You are like, you got to lift heavy shit forever.
yeah,
And it's like, yeah, we know we need to lose weight. I mean, we need to do weights. We know weight training is good for osteoporosis. Like we've all
yeah,
heard these kind of colloquialisms, however you say that word. Like these, oh yeah, you got osteoporosis, you got to have strong bones, so you need to always lift weights. Like
yeah.
I think most people have heard something around that before, but I don't think most people have ever heard, and I didn't know this until you just said that it changes your microbiome and how
Changes your
important the gut
microbiome.
is.
Yeah.
But
And one more,
also, what the other, I was just going to say, sorry, my naturopath just told me, he said that one of the biggest biomarkers, if you're going to survive from something major, like a heart surgery, we were kind of talking about John, is your muscle mass. And
thousand
why
percent.
is that?
1000%. Well, it's the organ of longevity for one.
Mm,
Muscle also is, I always tell women, I'm like, you got to make sure you don't lose muscle mass. You know, it is the organ of longevity. It's a glucose disposal site.
mm,
Okay. However, this is what happens. Estrogen, when we were younger and we had lots of estrogen,
mhm.
we had actin and myosin, which are fibers that cause the muscle contraction. We had estrogen to do that. We don't
Mm.
have enough estrogen anymore. So now we have to get that muscle contraction from pushing heavy shit, as you said, from lifting
You said
heavy
it. I was
weight.
quoting you.
Yeah. That's why we have to lift heavy weight, because now we're getting a central nervous system response. We're not getting that hormonal response. So
Mm,
that's another reason why we have to lift heavy weight, because also we become more insulin sensitive. And the less muscle you have, the more insulin resistant you become. So
mm,
it is,
mm,
that's why women, you're losing muscle mass, and that's why you're having more glucose issues. That's why your fasting glucose and insulin are going up. And you're like, I haven't even changed anything. I'm doing everything the same. I'm like, but that's are those little tweaks. Exercise, do push heavy stuff, do the sprint interval training, increase your fiber. If you do those things, you are going to do so much better. You've got to have at least 1 gram of protein per your ideal body weight. Or like I always tell my patients, minimum 100 grams, minimum of 100 grams. I'm always just like, that's the minimum. As soon as I get them on that, I'm like, okay, let's start increasing your protein in this way.
yeah, because if you have put on some weight, maybe you weigh 150, but you'd like to be 130, or that's your optimal weight, then you would do 130 grams of protein.
You could do between a 30 and 150, but once again, don't let, and see, this is where the scale comes in. The
Hmm.
scale, throw it out unless you have a scale that's going to show your muscle mass and bone, and you know, what's muscle, what's bone. Because your body composition, I've had patients where they did not lose a pound, but their whole body just changed. They're like, I wear like a dress 3 sizes smaller. My body, the scale's the same, but they lost all this fat and they gained muscle. Muscle weighs more. It's your organ of longevity. And just by having more muscle in your body, you're likely to survive a lot of those comorbidities that people have challenges with, stroke, with heart attack, diabetes, cancer. Just the fact that you're not becoming sarcopenic, you're losing muscle.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just got one of those scales. Do you have one at home? I just
I
got one.
do.
It has the
Yeah.
BMI and then the muscle mass and then the
Mhm.
body. It's so cool. I love it.
Yes. So that's something you
Awesome.
can look at.
Thank you so much, Dr.
You're
Linda. We
welcome.
are going to get to the rest of the questions in part two. Thank you so much for taking your time and energy to be with us and share your wisdom and answer so many questions that I got. I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much.